serious here. It's almost showtime.
3, 2, 1. It's showtime. It's showtime!
And now, broadcasting from the Valley Truck Commander's studio at PayneAutoGroup.com, this is News Talk 710 KURV, and this is The Drive Home, an interactive show where you call in with your comments and questions. Call in now at 1-800-580-8255. That's 1-800-580-TALK. Buckle up. The Drive Home on News Talk 710 KURV begins now.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy Tuesday, February 9th, 2016. I'm Roxnne Garcia along with Davis Rankin, and you guys, thanking you so much for joining us and for being with us on this Tuesday afternoon. It's been a very, very eventful day for us here at KURV. I had to go to 2 press conferences, and we had the State of the City address here in McAllen, and I'm wearing my shirt because I heart McAllen.
Where'd you get that?
At the State of the City
Well, they
address.
didn't give me one.
Because you left early, Davis. That's
I had
what you
things
did.
to do and people to see, places to go.
Yeah, whatever.
I left my Ziplocs in the car, and by the time I got back with the Ziplocs for the desserts that are left over, they wouldn't let me back in.
I was thinking about that because you didn't eat your dessert, and you don't like chocolate. So
almost never
you
eat
had a
dessert.
chocolate cake in front of you, and I had the lemon one. It's
almost
so
never
good.
Eat dessert.
So I was thinking should I take? But I didn't take this. I didn't take any desserts. But they were delicious, and we'll say that.
Believe it or not, I look at the desserts and go, all that food's going to waste. Except I don't think it does.
What do you think happens to it?
Which is why all the serving staff, that explains why they're all like 400 pounds.
That's not true.
And it's not true.
But that's a good
They had
question.
about
What
900
happens
people.
to all the desserts that people don't eat? Think about it.
They box them up, they put dry ice, and they ship them to all the starving people in South Sudan.
Really?
No. Steve Parkhurst is our guest, and by way of introduction, he is a political scientist, consultant,
Mm-hmm.
which is a class of some speculation in the political world. And we were talking, of course, about the voting today in New Hampshire and what's going to come out of that, and it's either going to be the savior of Christendom or I'm not sure what else. What's the name? Thank you for being with us. What's the name of your political consultancy?
It's American Renaissance Political Consulting Group.
Oh, American Renaissance. So you don't think we're in the twilight of empire here in the U.S. of A.?
Well,
Don't answer that. Don't answer that, Mr. Park.
Yeah.
What? By the way, before we get to the issue at hand, what you have any clients this year that we would know? Anybody you're quarterbacking to victory?
Not down in your part of the state. We have somebody in the San Antonio area. We have people in Houston area, obviously, and then we have Florida, Pennsylvania, California. So
Whoa!
Kind of a place, other places, but not McAllen right now.
So you're like a farmer who diversifies his crops. You're diversifying your. So what do we want to ask Mr.
Well, today
Mr.
is the primary, New Hampshire primary. And, Steve, earlier this week, or last week, when Ted Cruz won the Iowa caucus, we wanted to know, the ground game. And what is it that goes on with a political consultant or through their minds, or how do they, I guess, tell their client what to do, how to do it, what goes behind all of that?
How do you say get your head out very, very politely? How do you sell that to your client?
Well, that was 2 different questions, but Marco Rubio is taking kind of a beating lately because he's sounding very robotic. But that, that's actually what you try to drill into a candidate's head is, look, this is what people care about. This is what's resonating. So just keep saying it, and don't, every time you deviate from your message and you start answering, either the wrong questions or you start answering other people's questions that really don't matter. In everyday life, like if all of a sudden somebody comes along and starts saying, well, what if there's a 10th planet? Well, nobody really cares about a 10th planet right now.
Yeah.
So you stay on message, you stay on your principles, and you stay on what's resonating and what matters. And so that's really what a consultant does. And then there's the consultant is in these situations right now where you have Iowa and then you have New Hampshire and South Carolina. You put together your ground game, and you put together a team of people. And if you're really good, you have a captain or a person who kind of leads every county. And then even from that point, like you have a place like Harris County, it's so big, you need regional captains. But that's what you do. And then you have those people kind of in charge of getting out to the communities and getting the voters that they've targeted as supporters and getting them to the polls, and then also identifying your people that you would kind of call either your independents or your undecideds, and trying to persuade them to, look, we know you're going to go vote. We'd like you to vote for our guy, and kind of just keep pounding on those guys until they cast a ballot and you can't influence them any longer.
You make it, and this is not a poke, but you've laid it out very simply. It must be very difficult to do. The thing I heard about Cruz before the Iowa caucuses was that his people were very relaxed because they knew they had it wired. They were so well organized, which I took to mean they'd identified real worker bees and not people with just titles in these counties who actually got people to go to these caucuses. What's the trick in getting this to all come into place?
Well, I mean, what I just answered was the ground game, and that doesn't account for your TV ads and your radio ads and what you do online and just everything else, direct mail and everything else that's involved in a campaign. But it really does come down to identifying and getting these people. There was a snowstorm last week during the Iowa caucus.
Yeah. And
so all of a sudden that can throw a real wrench into your game, just like if you say, well, okay, we're going to wait on Election Day, polls close at 7 p.m., our vote gets to the polls between 4 and 7 p.m. Well, if there's a major rainstorm and, it's going to slow down your people, all of a sudden you get a little bit nervous. So it's just about building that team and, again, identifying those voters. And if it takes, sometimes it takes about 7 to 10 images, let's say a voter seeing somebody's image just to remember their name.
Yeah.
If you're talking about you've got to make 40 or 50 impressions, and sometimes even more with some of these guys, that's just what you have to do. And either you want to try to compete or you don't. And a lot of people, some candidates like John Kasich didn't even compete in Iowa. So, everybody's kind of got a different tactic, a different way to go about putting a team together. But that's what we do as far as from the consulting side, is just put that team together and then just go to work every single day. And it looks fun because you see these guys going to these rallies and you think that that's all it really is. But there's a lot of work involved, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and a lot of sleepless nights.
Steve Parkhurst is a political consultant by trade. His company is American Renaissance. You'll find it online at American Renaissance. And we got him hooked into this because he answers his telephone. And we found him online.
Yes, he does.
I wanted somebody, frankly, who actually does this for a living, as opposed to people who are just enthusiastic about it.
I want to know, Steve, I guess, how do you tell, or what do you tell someone you come across, or if somebody that you're having go out there and reach the voters, if they come across someone that just says, hey, well, my vote doesn't count, so I'm not going to go out there and vote?
Well, that's a tough one, and what I go back to, and I guess that it's kind of fortunate that I don't know if I would say I grew up at the time that I did, but the 2000 election in Florida, where that state came down to 537 votes that put George W. Bush over the top and gave him the presidency that year. 500 in a state as big as Florida, I'm sure there were 537 people that probably thought they were going to go vote for Al Gore, and they said, my vote's not going to count, I'm not going to bother, and they could have tied that election. So I mean, that's just a really close, a really big example of, look, lots of people could say my vote doesn't count, but it does. And there's great stories in history about the farmers that would live 50 miles from their polling location back in the 1800s, and they would travel by wagon and horse and all that, several miles to go to their polling place. Just the husband and wife, just to cancel out each other's vote. But it's still important to go and do it, And so you got to tell them, hey, look, there's either you believe in these things or you don't. And if you do and you're with me, then I need you to get to the polls and vote. And that's really as convincing as you can make it. You can't threaten them, and you can't say it's against the law not to vote or anything like that. But you just really, if you've got the right candidate, somebody who's it depends on where they're at too. If somebody comes to a rally, you see these guys have these huge rallies on TV every night. If somebody's at one of these rallies and they say, well, my vote doesn't really count, that's somebody that you can really persuade because they're in front of you right at the moment. And if you fire them up and you say the right things, you can get them to the polls and you can get them to vote for you.
I have read that Patrick Cadell, who must have a contract with Fox News to be a consultant, and I don't know if he still does polling or political consultancy, but I think he worked for Jimmy Carter, And he's been a bit of a renegade Democrat. He says this is an insurgent year, that if you're not seen by people as, I'm not sure who they're insurging against, but if you're not an insurgent, you're just not going to make the cut. What do you think about that since you're out there in the hustings?
Well, it certainly seemed like it was going to be that way for a little while. When there was the early polling that showed Ben Carson doing really well, and obviously Trump is doing well. Trump should win tonight. He was, finished second in Iowa, which is not a bad thing. It could be the year of the insurgent. On the Democrat side, obviously you don't have that. I mean, you have entrenched politicians running on that side, so it's a false narrative over there.
Sanders is a bit of an insurgent, don't you think, against the folks who control the party machinery? At least it seems to me that way. No?
Yeah, if you want to go by that definition, I was kind of going more along the lines of the people who have never been in politics, or the people who are kind of new to the system. So yeah, if you want to broaden the definition, then yeah, the people who go against the grain, that's why Trump has done so well. Is just because he gets out there and he just says stuff that some people are probably thinking and they're just too afraid to say it. He's actually the one saying it.
Let me ask you about this Trump thing, because he was in the news yesterday for repeating with glee,
yes,
like my child would have done, a vulgar remark from a lady in the audience about Ted Cruz, of all the people to accuse being weak.
But I guess it's the way he said it also, Steve. Like, I don't agree with this, but he is yada. I mean,
like
that's
my
just
children, like my children before they.
How dare you call Ted Cruz a
repeating?
bleep.
But and I said, this is just over the top, this stuff. And my wife said people are just, not to excuse it, but she said people are just mad. Now, I don't think that excuses using. But what do you think about people are just mad?
I absolutely agree with it. And if you look at the people who are, online, we call them the Trumpkins, the people who will not, the people who will not sway, they will not deviate from Trump, and everything he says is magic to them. That you can't convince them that what he said was vulgar or idiotic.
I suggest they try that at Thanksgiving dinner sometime. Let's see how far they get with that. Pardon me.
Yeah, well, exactly. And the bottom line is what's really disturbing is that this kind of goes back to the trend that started with Bill Clinton in '92 with the whole boxers and briefs thing. And it's just like, there's just some stuff that ought to rise above the level of the presidency. You're talking about the highest office in the land,
yep,
and the highest office in the world. And why would you go out there and say stuff like that? I mean, it's just, and especially if you're Trump, if Trump was really in a close race and it was bottom line, I don't think he would have said that. I think he feels good about his lead, and he really wasn't worried about irking people and suppressing turnout by any means. But I suspect that if he were in a closer race and kind of fighting for his political life, he probably wouldn't have said that. And it's just idiotic to say it.
Well,
I also agree with that, because you're right. As a commander-in-chief, you do have a higher standard to uphold, and when you're out there saying things like that, it's just kind of like Davis said, acting like you're like his child. You're acting like a little kid. You don't do that as a
George
president.
W. Bush would shriek. I never believed any of this, but I did see it bandied about. He was shrieking and cursing in the Oval Office. Here's a question, though, for the political consultant part of you, the person who does this. It's how you earn your bread. I keep reading that in spite of all this, that if Hillary Clinton is the nominee, which is where the betting is now, that because of the built-in strength of the way people vote, that she's really not that many states away from becoming president. As bad as it may look for them, that they're really in a very strong position to win the presidency again. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that goes back to who our nominee is. Ultimately, whether you put some states in play or not. If you have Rubio as our nominee and you put Florida in play, if you had Kasich as our nominee and you put Ohio, more in play than normal, then so that does matter a little bit. For the most part, though, I mean, these elections do typically come down to just about 9 or 10 states these days. There were some really interesting stories in the aftermath of the 2012 election, where everybody was excited. Well, everybody on the Republican side was excited when Romney really beat Obama bad in that first debate. The Obama team, if you read the stories and read the detail on the big data and everything that went on behind the scenes, they were not worried after that first debate at all, because they were tracking in those 9 states that mattered in 2012, and the dial didn't move at all. And so that debate, while the Republicans thought they did well and they thought they won and they thought they had set the presidency back for the Democrats and all that, it had no effect on them at all, and the Democrats weren't phased. So, yeah. So I mean, it comes down to those few states, and Obama was a different kind of figure. I'm not sure that I would not say that this is in the bag this year. It doesn't. Yeah, for the Democrats.
Now, you saw Bill Clinton yesterday lashed out, to quote CNN, lashed out at sexist and profane attacks on his wife and her supporters by Bernie Sanders people. And I saw this morning on Morning Joe, people going, oh, he shouldn't have said that. Bill Clinton should have kept his mouth shut. He shouldn't. Yeah. Is it really that nasty? Do you have any insight into that?
I thought it was. And I really... I mean, the Democrat Party, the only person that they could have trotted out worse to speak on that issue would have been Ted Kennedy.
Well, he's dead, yo. That would have been a trick.
That's the only reason he wasn't there yesterday. But I just can't. I can't imagine who they could have sent out that would have been a bigger. A bigger hypocrite on the issue than Bill Clinton. So
about talking trash about people. I mean,
say that again.
About talking trash about people?
Yeah, well, and basing it on sexism and all of that. I mean, with it, given his history and, question.
Steve, hold on, Davis. I'm always thinking, like, why is it that when it comes to the different parties, the Democratic Party, to me, has better marketing skills, has better ways of giving out their product or what they have to sell. But when I know, of course I'm biased, but I'm thinking, man, like, we have the truth here. If we were to just say exactly what's going on with it when it comes to the left and just exploit what they're doing and all that stuff. Why don't we do that as Republicans? Or I'm talking about like the way they sell things. About? Like there are certain, like the GOP war on women. That's not true. When it comes to gender pay gap,
nickel beer. Everybody wants free sex and nickel beer. That's not
true. So a lot of what the left does is just say a bunch of lies, and then people eat it and they buy it, and they believe it. And it's just I'm thinking if Republicans were to do that with the truth, I think it would be a completely different story.
Well,
so I don't know
Roxnne,
what you can say to that.
Yeah, no, Roxnne, if you figure this one out, I would love to have you come work for our company because this is the one, one of those age-old questions. Republicans play politics a lot of times like they're debating at the Harvard Debate Club, where there's sophisticated argument and there's logic and reason involved. And when you're going up against the Democrats, logic and reason don't get in their way ever. Mm-hmm. And when you live in this world of the 7-second soundbite or the 30-second soundbite, it's really hard to debate and argue in that light and in that medium. So it's Republicans always think, well, if I just can get my message out there, I'm going to get a fair shake, mm-hmm. and the media's got to report the facts, and that's just not true. And then then you try to counter with, okay, well, do the conservatives have enough media? And obviously we don't, because as well as Fox News does, Fox News is not lock, stock, and barrel conservatives hosting those shows, and so you get weird questions, you get some weird shows, you get some weird hosts. You were talking about Pat Goodell a while ago. I think he's on Fox News several times a week, on the various shows as a so-called expert, and so there's just this, especially in the media, there's just this void where you just can't penetrate your story all the time. You just can't get it out there every single time.
All right, thank you very much, Steve Parkhurst. We appreciate it.
That's all the time we have, Steve. Thank you so much.
We'll check you as we get closer to the March 1st primary.
Sounds good. I'll be around.
Yes,
Thank you, Steve. He's a political consultant, and you can find his website at, let me get to it, AmericanRenaissance.com, Political Consulting Group. This is 710 KURV.